Hey everyone, welcome to Architecture for Thought. So we're going to do a interior and an exterior view in Midjourney using version 5. And if you were with us last time, we looked at using reference images. So we'll do the same thing today, but we want to take a look at using the reference image with the prompt and then without the same prompt without the reference image to see how Midjourney changes the images. So let's jump right into it. We'll keep it relatively quick. What I have on my screen were basically experiments I was working on, but I want to do the interior. So if you were with us last time, you can take an image offline or you can use your own by clicking on the plus sign in the message box. That allows you to upload an image that you can reference as a URL. So this image is actually from one of our projects from my company, Corliss Architecture. It's a traditional modern house design, but we're going to mix it with a relatively futuristic looking image I had produced on Midjourney as well. So I'm going to upload that and do the same thing. So after I get these both in here, I'm going to be able to click on it, open it in a new browser, take the URL, and I'm just going to paste it in here to start, and I'll come back and start the prompt over it. So I'm opening these up in a new browser. Copy, spacebar, paste. So now I know I've got both of those. And actually to start, we're just going to see what it comes up with. If we just paste it in and do a -- AR space 16:9 and -- V5 is going to give us that version 5. So we'll roll that, and while that's going, let's work on our exterior. So again, I'm going to click the plus button. So same thing for this. This is another project our company is working on. It is an exterior facade remodel. So I was curious to jump to that too. Commercial. An exterior facade remodel of a medical center and an addition to the building as well. So we've got that loaded in, and I was curious to see how it would work with basically a very abstract form. This is a 3D print I've made. So again, I'm going to open these, open in browser, copy the URL, spacebar, same thing with this. Copy, space so that they're not connected, paste, and then the same modifiers, -- AR space 16:9 -- V space 5 to get that version 5. And we're just going to run these raw, see what Midjourney is going to do by basically mixing them together. So then I also have a prompt ready that I was interested to use for our interior. It's one of my prompts that I have available on a video that I've done before, but I will also include it in the description of this video. So I'll read it off real quick. It's a futuristic curvilinear interior, minimal foyer, terracotta, clay, arches, tall coffered ceilings, white stucco, curved glass, lush prairie landscape, artificial lighting, green ivy, lush botanicals, plants, succulents, all white environment, foggy, and then the modifiers. There's a lot of planting, kind of words in there, and that's to just accentuate the plantings, because I've noticed if you only have 1 or 2 words in there, it literally only gives you 1 or 2 plants. and that's not enough for me what I was looking for. So these are pretty interesting already without any words or prompts. This is just Midjourney mixing the two reference images together, and then obviously you can continue developing those. We'll just develop one of these a little further. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. Do a variation on that. But let's also, I'm going to paste this in, and I'm going to take these reference images. Copy and paste them, and you'll notice Midjourney or Discord, it basically shortens the URL. So it's the same images though, don't be worried about that. And paste it in, make sure there's a space between them, a space between the prompt, and then we have our modifier at the end. Actually didn't add the imagine. So now we're going to see the prompts without, or sorry, the reference images without a prompt versus with a prompt, and we'll do the same thing with this exterior image. And these are actually pretty cool. You can see how it's attempting to merge the two images together. Definitely with the black 3D print and kind of the lines. I'm not sure if you can see that on your screen, but there's definitely some texture happening on the black that was emulating the 3D print lines. So that's pretty cool. Let's do a couple of variations on these. 1, 2, I like this 3, so we'll do variation on 3. They're all pretty cool, but it's easy to get start spawning off with too many variations. I'm going to do a / imagine, paste that in, and go back to a prompt that I want to use for that, which is up here. I'll read it off in a moment. Let's see. It is well, I'll just paste this in. We got our modifiers, we're ready to go. This one is a flowing terracotta clay, 3D print, perforated, architectural villa, wispy, pavilion, glossy white, striated, tiered, dusty, foggy, windy, sunrise, low light, artificial lighting, cactus, illuminated swimming pool, cinematic photography, and then the modifiers. A lot of different ideas happening in there, and I've noticed that Midjourney version 5 at least is much more literal with how it interprets the prompt and reference images. So you can do a lot more with a lot less. That's just kind of some words of encouragement. You'll notice even we'll start removing some of these reference images so that we can see how that affects. I think you can be more deliberate with your use of reference images in combination with your prompt to get really specifically what you're looking for. These are looking gorgeous. I mean, really beautiful, amazing. You can see how it's definitely trying to put the stairway in there and merging this kind of fluid abstract image with it. So what we should do next is basically take this prompt without any reference images so you can see the difference of what it is going to produce. And we'll do the same thing with, it looks like my exterior is still trying to start, but we'll do the same thing with the exterior. And it looks like these finished up. Again, I mean, this is very elaborate. I didn't really have anything specifically in mind other than just trying to coach you guys through using reference images in combination with prompts. So that one's interesting, but I'm not too interested in it actually. This one, I like the balance. Sort of the asymmetry is nice. The colors, the tones are sort of nice. This colonnade of arched windows is nice in my opinion. So I'll run some variations on 1 and 4, and we'll also just upscale 4 while we're at it. Here was our exterior, some options. Really cool. It's hard not to like any of these. So I'll try and pan so you can see. The geometry is definitely picking up on that abstract image, which looks great. That was a 3D print I made that was just abstract, kind of for explorational purposes. But you can see how doing that, in combination with some of your images or renderings, I do want to encourage, or actually rather discourage, you from using reference images that are not yours, architects that I will not name, that produce interesting image geometries and architectures. It's good for you to develop your own language, your own design language, and your own set of reference images as you kind of continue on with this. I think it'll provide for some uniqueness and more passion-driven results. So here's our prompt without those reference images, and you can see it's exploring, it's kind of taking it upon itself to generate these spaces without any references, and they look great also. So let's actually, I really like these a lot, so I'll do some variations, or also upscale 1 and 2, just so we can take a look at some of the detail in it. This prompt for the exterior on its own has a lot going on with it, so you can see it's trying to kind of compromise a lot. I'm not really a huge fan of any of these specifically, but I've noticed when I re-roll this one, I get very different results every time. So we'll just re-roll that once to see if we get something better that we like. Again, some variations on some of the earlier images with the references. I'll upscale this bottom right one just so we can reference it. And here, we'll just open this up. I want to mention, with version 5, we're getting a lot more detail, and you'll notice like the plants, any of your entourage items, they're looking much more refined, much more realistic. Even the architectural elements like the stairs and the windows, they've got mullions, they've got, and where the mullions meet the jambs, there's shadow lines. So there's amazing detail, especially in the reflections. Earlier versions of Midjourney did a good job, but you can tell it was trying, didn't quite exactly have the geometry down, but now it looks like it's really recognizing or understanding what the image is and what it's trying to achieve, and it's producing pretty great results. So here we re-rolled our exterior again, and it's getting much different results this time, which is interesting. So here's what we had. Oh, this is what we had without any prompt, and this is my reference images with the prompt. So these look amazing. Again, there was a lot in that prompt, so you're getting a lot of different options. But if you're looking for something more specifically, you can definitely refine the prompt, take out some words that are representing themselves in the image that you don't want to see. So I actually like a lot of these. So let's just do a variation on 1 and 4. And in the meantime, we'll check some of these out. So again, great detail in some of these interior images. The chairs actually look like chairs. The benches off in the corner look like benches. And even the floor, the perspective of the floor with the joint lines and what appears to be tile looks great. And again, Midjourney 5 is really pulling the whole image together to look more realistic in terms of perspective, entourage items, shadows, reflections. But I do also want to mention that, when you're building these scenes, the architecture is important, but also the qualifiers of the space and the types of space is really important. So you'll notice in my prompts, there's a lot of kind of atmospheric qualifiers in terms of time of day, fogginess, the camera perspective. If you're not into renderings or creating architectural visualizations, it may be difficult for you to understand how to dictate or kind of define some of these things for Midjourney to produce. But you have to remember, this is basically a scene that you're setting up. It's not just the architecture or the arched openings or the stairway off in the corner. It is the entire image. So if you don't have some of these qualifiers, such as ambient lighting, artificial lighting or accent lighting, illuminated, foggy, what time of day is it? If you don't have those qualifiers in your prompt, then you're not going to get them represented in your image. So I'm just kind of opening these so you can see the amount of detail and the fidelity of the quality of image. It's really great. The shadows, the geometry, the perspectives. So let's kind of jump back over to some of our other exteriors that we were producing. So here I like some of these options a little bit more for the prompt without my reference images. I think we'll do a variation on 2 and 1. And I'm going to re-roll that one more time just to check it out. I did want to say also that the perforations I've noticed, and even striations or kind of geometry just in general, is much more detailed and accurate in version 5. So that's something to take note of. Again, an extra level of detail and an extra kind of qualifier in your image. These are actually not turning out as nice as I thought they would. That happens sometimes. So it's actually interesting to kind of go back to where you were and upscale that and then work on variations of that upscale. That's okay too. But let's do that because I kind of want to check out how it's going to produce those openings in that geometry there. And we'll slide back down here, check this one back out. These are really great. Really like the fluidity and kind of how it's negotiating the rigid, meaning like linear geometry with some of the fluid geometry. So, and then in addition, the perforations that are layered on top of that. So we'll just pick one of these to upscale to take a closer look at. I kind of like that top right one for some reason. 1, 2, upscale 2. So here we had that kind of, this prompt was developed as part of a series I was doing for like 3D printed Adobe mud architectural villas, and it looks great in version 5 because it really took on the kind of quality of the perforations and brought them to life, where in some of the previous versions it wasn't quite there. So I'm going to upscale one of these so we can kind of take a look. Let's do just that first one, upscale 1. Just making sure I didn't miss anything there. So this is our exterior prompt with the reference images. And the light quality, like through the perforations, is something to take note of also. Really interesting. So I did want to take this one also. And I was curious what it would produce. Let's see if we actually, let's remove this 3D print. And I'll just keep it the image of our project. So that was the second URL. I'm going to take that out and let's see what it produces there. What I've also noticed is version 5, it almost looks like the kind of first round generations are already upscaled, almost as large as they can get, because when you upscale them, they come out really quick, almost too quickly. Like this is what you see is what you get, which is fine because these images are already very large. Let's run a couple variations on 1 and 4. I like the light quality of that. And again, in looking at these, for these exteriors, the reflections, I don't know if you can see this bottom right one, but the reflections are way more accurate. Like in the water here, it's not just attempting, it's literally producing the reflection with the mullions and the details, and even like the perforations and the folds in the kind of fabric-like facade here. So it's taking the level of detail way more accurately in version 5. This is our exterior image. So it does look like it makes it larger. And we're just kind of looking at the perforations and the geometry. Our hard edges are much crisper. The shadowing on it is more accurate. Everything is looking kind of way more realistic in version 5, which is awesome. So I think we're getting kind of towards the end here. I'm going to check to see if anyone had any comments that they wanted us to pick up. Very cool. All right. So if you guys don't have any like specific requests or comments or questions, it looks like we'll kind of leave it for here. I have one here. It looks like, how should we really structure it? So if you're asking about actually structuring the prompt, it does still seem like it tries to take the first words more prominently. There is also a way to weight each of the words if you want them to have more prominence in your prompt. I've worked with that before. It kind of becomes very convoluted. So I've just kind of stuck to piling in the words and putting in the more prominent words for the prompt that I want to see in the image up front. And then, like I had mentioned earlier, if there's, if landscaping is really important to you, not just putting in landscaping, but elaborating on what type of landscaping, and, several words that kind of chain link or just link those concepts together. So landscaping, native plantings, and then what type of native plantings. You can even get into seeing like cattails or maiden grass. So each of those words is going to allow Midjourney to really understand, the levels of detail that you're wanting to include in the image. But if you're asking from maybe more of a higher level perspective of structuring, like I mentioned before, you need to qualify everything in the image. And I think, again, whatever is most important to you in terms of developing the scene, like you're developing a rendering out of any other 3D, software you're using, you need to really understand what's most important. Is it the time of day? There's a lot of great companies that produce renderings that you barely see the architecture in the rendering. It's almost like in the background or just on the side, and it's in a field with families playing frisbee and having a picnic, and it's about expressing the experience more than the architecture. But if it's anything like these, or like this bottom right hand image, which looks great, you know, and it wants to be more specific on the architecture, then you need to focus on that. You know, like this is a modern futuristic building with a cantilevered, perforated, terracotta colored upper facade with storefront below. You know, it's hard to kind of dictate some of these geometries that don't really have great names without referencing, you know, a famous architect. But that's why I encourage you to develop your own catalog of images that either you've produced, drawn, modeled, that you can then upload for it to reference. I guess this is a good point also to mention, like, I've got a document with all of my prompts that I've ever created, basically, that I will be sharing shortly with you guys. You know, I don't know how helpful it's going to be really in terms of accurately defining different types of geometries and these things, but you can pick and choose and see what works for you. You know, there's like interesting types of geometries in here, lattice or different types of 3D patterns, space frames. So you can kind of pick and choose and create your own prompts based off of all of these. But that is actually one of the workflows that I've started to generate. So I'll give you guys a little sneak peek here. This is a lecture that I gave at the University of Toronto just this past week, and it goes through basically different workflows, and I introduced myself and my experience going to IAC, the Institute for Advanced Architecture in Catalonia, studying the different digital fabrication types. I think I just saw someone ask, how long do we have to wait for technology to catch up? We don't. I mean, this stuff is here. It's just about us developing these workflows to get these images into production. So, you know, I went through some projects that we had created, not using AI at the time, but these were important professional career to start building, you know, curvilinear architecture using digital fabrication. And basically this lecture took us up to the point where I broke off onto my own company, where I'm now, you know, doing typical architecture, but also trying to work artificial intelligence into our workflow. So I came up with 5 unique workflows that try to take artificial intelligence from step 1, whether that's synthetic image production, and take that to production. So for example, well, the first version was componentized digital fabrication, and it basically takes our 2D images, makes 3D models out of them, and then uses digital fabrication to print. And this is kind of showing the traditional versus emergent. I'll go through this whole lecture in a kind of scripted video, but I'm giving you guys a sneak peek behind the scenes to see, you know, what we're actually looking at to try and produce and fabricate some of this. We're not too far off. And if you've seen some of my other videos, you'll understand, you know, how we're starting to approach that by using things like depth maps and extrapolating the 3D geometry from it, so that we can almost avoid the 3D modeling process. But I will say that a big interest of mine is developing a catalog of language that can help produce these geometries, so that we can actually start to understand how to dictate these geometries. You know, swooping, hard edge, ruled surfaces, developable surfaces, striated, you know, all these kind of defining geometric words that help us produce these images. That's what's going to help us kind of be more deliberate about producing these images. So I'm just going to check one more time back in the chat before we wrap this up. So it looks like we're kind of all caught up with that. So I hope this was helpful for everyone that was on the line here. Thanks for being here. Anyone else that's watching this, I hope it's just helpful for you to see some of these tips and tricks. And stay tuned for that lecture that I'll post soon that kind of takes us into the next step of integrating artificial intelligence with architecture. So thanks again, and I'll see you guys soon.